Welcome back. Now, the cases, the many of them actually, of underage voters discovered on the voter register of the National Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, has over time raised concerns and questions about the Commission's registration and technology ahead of the upcoming 2023 election. To provide control measure in such cases, the electoral body announced that underage persons, that is, those below 18 years, who attempt to vote during this year's general elections and their parents are to be arrested and prosecuted. The National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, made the announcement earlier in the week. Okoye says in an effort to address issues around underage registration, INEC had summoned all its officers in areas where the anomaly is most likely to take place. The National Commissioner said the cleanup of the voter register was ongoing, adding that Nigerians would be pleased with the end result. INEC has also promised to investigate and prosecute officials involved in the infractions and registration of underage voters as seen in the published voters register. Just last week, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, publicly promised that notwithstanding the challenges facing the commission, it would conduct impartial, free and fair elections and deliver electoral justice in 2023. Now, these promises made by INEC remain just words by citizens who entertain fear over the conduct and outcome of the elections. To discuss this further, now being joined on the program by public affairs analyst Victor Ohai and the Director of Center for Public Accountability, Olufemi Lawson. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Lawson. When you must have seen the voter register when it was published, when we saw a number of clearly underage voters who were registered. When you see that kind of thing, and then you hear INEC now saying that any underage voter who attempts to vote on election day would be arrested, does that give you confidence at all?
We should be concerned as Nigerians, and we should be worried that we are having such situations where on our national voters register we find children who are underage being registered to vote in the coming elections. But we must also commend INEC that it is making itself available for the kind of probe that we have seen Nigerians probing the integrity of the registration process. INEC has done a lot in ensuring that Nigerians are carried along in the registration process, in the subsequent verification exercises, and of course, the decision of the PVC. What has necessitated this kind of situation is the fact that as we speak, the country does not have a database of its citizens. It does not have a database, social security number system for citizens. So it is difficult for anybody, even if they're born yesterday, to wake up and register to participate, not only in election, but other national duties as regards such that there are age limits for participation. So for what INEC has done, it is important that it is taken beyond mere statement by INEC to the point that we can criminalize this culture of politicians registering underage children to vote. I can assure you that these children didn't just wake up in their numbers to participate in the registration process. They must have been induced, mobilized by some greedy politicians across the country so as to increase number of people who are eligible to vote for them in the elections. So beyond the threat of arresting the parents of these underage children, which I think is very much in order, we must look at how we can criminalize a situation where underage voters are found in our elections. And this can only be done by properly legislating against the participation of underage voters in our election. It has to go beyond mere statements by INEC.
Mr. Ohai, let me ask you, just how easy or difficult do you think it will be to arrest these underage voters, especially on election day, and not cause some kind of chaos or scene, especially around some of these voting points?
Thank you very much for that question. First, I'd like to say I see an INEC that's, I don't want to say anxious, but very much interested in leaving a legacy now, which is why I think some of these measures are beginning to come in place. They are demonstrating that they're also responsive and they're listening to the public. Now, the point you made is very, very important because, I mean, INEC officials are fewer than voters. If you are in a place that is predominantly and overwhelmingly one-sided in terms of party support and all that, and they decide to bring all these people, the INEC official would be putting his life at risk. So it's going to be very difficult. What I think that INEC ought to do, rather, is to do massive voter awareness, at least to discourage some of those people from coming. And when that is done, it would minimize the number that will show up on the day. And if enough people show willingness, then perhaps it might be easier to stop those that are obviously underaged. Some may not be so obviously underaged. And a lot of this, if you excuse my saying so, is predominantly in the north. It's not so common in the south. Predominantly in the north, where if a girl is 12, she is said to be married, and as far as they're concerned, they are adults and they can come out and vote. So it's going to be a big problem. It's a challenge. But massive awareness in the media about, which is obviously part of what we're doing now.
Yes. If
that awareness is created and fear put in them, hopefully it might help to discourage some of these underage voters from even showing up. And once the parents know what the implications are, and the police, that is, I mean, if the police are alive to their responsibilities, we have no reason to, I mean, this will be taken care of. So my concern is how willing or how serious the police would be about effecting this. If they do it, then it will be very effective. But without the police and probably the other paramilitary forces that will be manning the elections, I don't see that being effective at all.
And it's very good that you raised the point about INEC officials now likely putting themselves on the line or putting their lives on the line now, should they refuse to allow, especially in situations where maybe at a particular voting point you have the predominance of members of a political party or so. So obviously it definitely will be difficult for the INEC officials to order the arrest or even prevent underage voting in such places. Now let me ask you, Lawson, could that be the reason why these underage voters are able to find their way into the voters register? Because they were actually registered by INEC officials, and some of these INEC officials must have clearly seen that, look, these individuals were clearly underage at the time, but they just couldn't do anything to prevent their registration. They couldn't stop them from getting registered, probably because of threats and what have you.
Yes, if that is the situation we find ourselves, it may also repeat itself during elections to the extent that INEC officials, because of the limited numbers and even the limited number of security agencies that are going to be present during elections, may be overwhelmed to the extent that they may not be able to prevent these underage voters, remember, who are most likely to have been sponsored by politicians to participate in this election. So that is why initially I referred to the option of criminalizing this process and making legal moves and ensuring that this does not, they don't find their way into, the balloting system. And how do we ensure this? Beyond the fact that we may not have the required number of security personnel to tackle this huge number of people who have been registered and are backed up by powerful politicians.
Let me go over to you, Mr. Ohai. What would you say about that? I mean, that, if these people were able to get registered during the voter registration process. So it would appear the INEC officials couldn't do anything to prevent them from registering.
Yes, I agree. I mean, we cannot rule out collusion between INEC members and politicians. This has always been the case in many instances and in many parts of the country, where you have very, very influential politicians and sometimes violent politicians as well, who will get the INEC officials to go and do the registration in their own homes, not even where they're supposed to be doing it. So when you find a situation like that, they bring the names, they decide who gets registered, they decide what the voters register, looks like. So we find a situation like that. So there's collusion. I think that if INEC would want to do this, they should start by making examples of their people in-house. Because it's not difficult. It's something that they can, people have reported, videos have been taken. If they investigate them and they can identify such polling units, then those who did the registration should be brought to book. If they are ad hoc staff, then they should face the law. Another thing that you might find right now is some of the underage voters of perhaps 4 years ago or 8 years ago have probably of age now.
That's true.
That's something, I mean, in cases like that, there's nothing you can do about it. Although those registrations were illegal, but it can be argued that they are the voting age right now. The other thing is the age on the register is not the actual age. But what we need to be looking out for right now are those, like I said earlier on, who are obviously underage. And if they have been registered, then, I mean, if they come out to vote, they should be arrested on the spot. And then examples, you only need to make example of a few people. And I can assure you that the world will soon go around and nobody wants to be in trouble. Nobody wants to sleep in the cell, even for one day. For how much? How much are the politicians giving them? So a lot still rests on INEC. It's not just, I mean, talk is cheap. It's not just enough to say it, but they have to be seen to be doing something. And this is, the election presents an opportunity. And beyond rhetoric, beyond just talking, what we would like to see is an INEC that not only backs, but actually bites. And that biting should start, from the beginning. I don't see why they cannot activate the whistleblowers, whatever it is. It's not just about financial crimes. Whistleblowing could also be that people who are registered illegally as children, even if people can blow the whistle and INEC is aware, then they should go out there, flush them out from those registers, and then on the day when they come, their names would not be there. And it will be obvious to everyone when they start making noise that these are underaged registered voters.
But let's face it, this will be difficult to deal with if you have a situation where in some of these places now where you have cases of underage voters, there's collusion from not just INEC officials, even INEC ad hoc staff. So it will be difficult, and difficult, for instance, to even carry out the INEC order of getting some of these underage voters now arrested and prosecuted.
But the easiest way out of this, just I was trying to mention, is for INEC not to wait to the point of elections before dealing with this situation. And how do we deal with this? INEC should be able to delist names of underage voters that have been discovered on its database.
It says it is in the process. It says it is doing so already. That it's an ongoing process.
We should expect INEC to have been able to, weed out a good number of these underage voters before the election proper. And this is going to be the easiest way for INEC. Rather, how many parents are you going to arrest? Where is the facility to arrest this parent? Where is the manpower rather to arrest parents of children who are in their hundreds who have been registered illegally to vote in our elections? So we must look at how we can take steps that will curtail their presence during elections, rather than waiting for the election day to start arresting these underage voters and their parents Who even says parents are going to be coming to the polling, accompanying these children, to the polling booth? And you must also remember that some of these children are children who have been exploited by politicians, children who are found on the streets taking, to these places to register. So INEC must begin to work now and not wait for the election day before trying to curtail the menace of these underage voters that may be participating in our elections.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your thoughts, and thank you very much for coming on the program. Thank you so very much. Well, that's how much we can take on the program this week. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.